3, 2, 1. It is Wednesday, August 23rd, and the Give and Go Show is back in your life. My name is Griffin Queen, and as always, I'm joined by Matt Ferentinos. I'm joined by super producer Elliott, and for the first time ever on any one of my podcasts, and even really anything to do with my life, I'm joined by Jerod Jensen, friend of the pod, friend of the show. Jerod, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. I will say it's the first time I've been invited, so I had to accept.
That can't be true. That's not accurate. I feel like
that is the truth. Yep.
You've never gotten a list night invite in the past?
No.
Yeah, wow.
I thought Thomas maybe at least tossed me an invite. Maybe Thomas.
Everyone else on this
Thomas
show.
Is catching strays on
Ferentinos multi-time guest on list night. Elliott Shigatani, one time only. Never will be a guest again on list night. we'll we've only recorded one episode this year, but at some point we'll get you on there.
Well, hopefully you'll want to have me back. We'll see how this goes first.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you here. For anybody who's watching the live stream or who is watching after the fact on YouTube, make sure you click the like button. Make sure you comment below if you have any questions for anybody on the show, or if you have any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. And if you haven't done so already, click that subscribe button. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, anything like that, make sure you click that follow button. Make sure you rate and review 5 stars. And if you enjoy the show or you enjoy anything else that we do, make sure you share it with a friend. Make sure you follow us on social media. We appreciate you being here. We're kind of just going to get into it today. As you may have noticed, Modai is still missing this week. He is still in his Alaskan vacation. I think that's where he is. Is that right, Ferentinos?
Yeah, I think he's not doing like the Alaskan truckers thing. He's doing something more fun, right?
No, I think he might be on a cruise. So he's like killing the environment, which I love. I love when people take cruises. Nothing gets me going more than that.
In his absence from the Give and Go Show account, I did like the tweet saying, "Is Joel Embiid like terrible playoff performer?" I was like, "Yes."
Was that you?
Yes.
That was you.
That was me. Yeah.
I thought that was Modai. I thought he had internet connection. That's so funny. That's good to know. Me. That's a little bit of inside baseball there. I thought it was him. So
I can see Modai do that though, because he just
absolutely. Yeah, well, to that point, to the point about Joel Embiid and the process as a larger thing, we're going to talk today about tanking. And I really wanted to have Jerod on here because he is a fan of a team that has gone through this. I am a fan of a team that has gone through this. To some degree, Ferentinos, your team, the Nets, have gone through this, although I will say they weren't really able to tank because they didn't have picks because of
we just didn't have assets. Yeah. So it's pretty brutal stretch.
Yeah, not great. You got some superstars out of it somehow because people like to play in New York and they don't want to play for the Knicks. But I kind of just wanted to have, a developed conversation on tanking, on the process. We wanted to do it while Modai was not here because he's so sick of talking about this, and I get that. He's been talking about the process for 8 years at this point. When Joel Embiid was drafted in 2014, so 9 years. That's a long time to be talking about losing games for the purpose of winning a championship to then not win a championship.
It's longer than a presidency.
It's longer. Yeah, it's longer than a re-elected presidency. You're right about that. Although, look, man, Trump 2024. Maybe we'll get term 2. Maybe we'll get term 3. Who's to say?
And really, they could be looking at another tank coming up here, depending on the James Harden news and Embiid potentially wanting out after all that too. So could be fun for the city of Philadelphia. Could be happening. Could also be having a tank for the United States, depending on the results of the 2024 election. So we'll see about that.
But like it's like Jordan's gap year, Yeah.
Although that first year that he was gone, if I remember correctly, I think they went 47-35. So there was some good things for the Bulls that first year without Jordan. I want to get into it. I just brought up, stats from the last 15 or so years of tanking, because I feel like it's really been since the mid 2000s that we've seen it to such an unbelievable degree. Obviously you have instances like the 90s with David Robinson getting injured at the beginning of the season. The Spurs tanked for 1 year. They got Tim Duncan out of it, but that wasn't an extended tank. There wasn't multiple years of being an atrocious team. Probably partially because they got Tim Duncan out of it. maybe the most NBA ready college player of all time. But obviously, we're coming off of the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. The Spurs did go through a tank again. They went 121 and 186 over the past few seasons, which is not truly terrible. It's 39.4% win percentage. We've seen way worse than that. We'll talk about some that are way worse than that. But outside of Wemby, they got Sochan, they got Josh Primo, who's not on the team anymore because of things unrelated to basketball. Looking at the Spurs where they are right now, and Ferentinos, will start with you. Just on the virtue of getting the number 1 pick, would you say that the Spurs have had a successful tank?
Well, didn't the Spurs have a Jakob Poeltl? They had him too before he got traded around. I feel like the Spurs.
Poeltl.
Yeah, there it is.
They did have him. I don't remember where he fell pick-wise. I'm sure I could pull it up for you pretty quickly.
Just because I feel like the Spurs definitely, once their trio of Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan kind of went down, they had a few years that they're trying to find their identity, but I never felt like they were really going for the tank. I think having the bottom 3 teams with the same percentage, which when did they start doing that again for the lottery odds? I'm not sure when they changed those rules.
2 years ago, I think. So it's only been these past 2 drafts that have had the new draft rules in place.
Yeah, because you didn't have to do it like the Sixers where they had to be the number 1 pick by far. You can have still bad odds. So I think the Spurs really tanked this past year, which worked out getting Wembanyama. And now they can build around him, which I think they were always doing a pretty good job of. Like you said, their picks weren't too bad. They had Dejounte Murray for a while and then traded him away because they wanted to rebuild, I think, around Wemby. So, it doesn't seem like they were really actively going for the tank. They were just kind of bad for a few years, which happens. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. I think it was one of the things where the stars kind of aligned and Wembanyama went to the Spurs. Just the French connection with Tony Parker. He was a fan of them as a kid. Couldn't have gone to a better place. And it'll be good to see Pop's career rejuvenated. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion on their tank as far as I just think they had a rough few seasons and it wasn't as intentional. Because there are some short-term tanks. The Mavericks literally just short-term tanked it. Instead of making the playoffs, they're like, fuck it, let's just take a better pick. We suck, even though we traded for Kyrie Irving and said that we were going to try to compete for a title. But, there's that.
One thing to your point earlier, Jakob Poeltl, drafted by the Raptors, has played for both the Raptors and the Spurs, I think multiple times at this point. So I get the confusion. It's kind of like, Spurs North going down to Spurs South.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a definitive Spurs player. So I understand why you would have that confusion. Jerod, to the point about the Spurs, about Wemby and the actual tank this past year, you're a fan of a Western Conference team. You're a fan of the Timberwolves. My condolences, obviously.
Not soon.
What the Spurs did this past year in terms of truly bottoming out for a top talent, and we've seen the Timberwolves do this in the past. Do you think this is going to be worth it for the Spurs, or based on what you've seen from the Timberwolves over the past decade, did maybe they go in the wrong direction?
No, I think it really depends on who's available in the draft, right? We got, Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, all 4 number 1 overall picks. And really, we only hit, in the grand scheme of things, Wiggins turned out to be a role guy, but as a number 1 overall pick, we really only hit on 2 of those, right? So as the Spurs, kind of like what Matt was saying, I don't necessarily think they had a complete tank, because under Popovich, he's not going to just let a team just tank and go for broke, right? So I think they almost had a competitive rebuild in the sense of they were just getting guys, a bunch of role players who would play hard, win them a few games, and similar to what Matt was saying, they just got lucky and got the number 1 overall pick. They could have easily, ended up with Scoot Henderson, which that'd be a good consolation prize, or they could have ended up with, Brandon Miller. So they get one of those 2 guys. This is gonna, go longer and longer as into the year. So I think with Wemby, just because he's pretty, arguably a once in a generational talent, it obviously worked for them. Well, you can't say obviously because, he could be hurt, health problems. But yeah, the Timberwolves, it's been a painful, 5, 10 plus, more than that years. And now it's finally, seeing the light of day a little bit.
Anthony
Edwards, and yeah, exactly. You're just finding the guys that are cultural guys, and if you ask Bill Simmons, the Spurs should also have Austin Reeves right now, so they should be really even better this year. But yeah, I should have signed him to the max. I know Griffin hates that point, so I had to just add that in there somewhere.
There's a lot of Austin Reeves talk on this show, I'll tell you that. You may have seen today's Instagram post. We talk about Austin Reeves a lot. Obviously, a big Austin Reeves guy. Truthfully, a big Bill Simmons guy as well. But I like what you said about the Spurs, about them being a competitive rebuild, because I'm going through and I put together these notes for the major tanks over the last 15 years, of which I did include the Spurs. And like I said, the Spurs came in at 39.4% winning percentage. Outside of the Magic, who kind of tanked in the middle of the 2010s, no one's coming close to that. Like, granted, they only got one top 5 pick out of that, and they happened to do it during a generational draft. Maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe it's not, the process system of getting as many top 3 picks as possible. Maybe it's just getting a top 3 pick at the exact right time. Obviously, we do still need to see who Wemby's going to be, but if he's what they say he's going to be, the Spurs only needed to truly tank for 1 year. Everything else is kind of gravy.
Yeah, guys are going to come. They see him 1 or 2 years in the league, they're going to come and want to go to San Antonio just based on, Popovich's pedigree, the franchise pedigree, all of it, right? It's going to be an easy destination for free agents, guys coming in the league. So, yeah, I mean, if he's what they say they're going to have another, potential dynasty on their hands.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, Griffin, also to your point, I mean, to try to just talking about tanking in general, because I do like there are teams that kind of go through bad stretches. I think the Sixers definitely set the trend of they won 15 games 1 year. They just did not even try for multiple seasons. But even the Thunder, because they developed a lot of young talent, but then last year finished 2-22. So I was going to say, to your point, when it gets to the part of the season where they just give up and are purposely tanking, is that different to you versus just bad organizations? I wouldn't necessarily say the Wizards were tanking those years. I just think that they were kind of terrible those years.
Sure.
Whereas teams will more strategically tank throughout the season. Do you think that's better or worse? I feel like that's kind of where Adam Silver is really trying to come down on it to try to make the regular season more of a entertaining product, with the in-season tournament coming up. I feel like those things are the incentives for not mid-season tanking. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So, I kind of see it 2 ways. And I do want to say, you actually gave the Sixers a little bit too much credit saying they won 15 games. There was a year in there where they went 10-72.
10-72.
Breaking the only team that has done worse than that in the NBA season is a 1970s Sixers team that went 9-73. So they have the 2 worst seasons of all time.
Oh my
God. Truly awful.
Biggest losers.
I don't have a massive issue with a team realizing, even if it's as early as Christmas or early January or something like that, a team realizing, hey, we don't have it this year. Let's pack it in. Let's keep our guys healthy. Now that everyone has a G League team, let's bring up some G League guys and get them some burn and see if we have any assets. And let's try and get these guys some reps while also planning for next year or maybe 2 years from now or something like that. And I'm not even necessarily saying that I take massive issue with tanking, although I don't think it's as successful as fans of teams who call for it all the time think it is. And I think the numbers kind of support my take on this. But when a team goes into the seasons, much like the Sixers did during the process era, with the Sam Hinkie plan of we are going to be as bad as humanly possible to acquire as many picks as possible and have as many tradable, low money contracts as possible, that does devalue the game to me, because that's no one has done it to that degree. The Lakers didn't do it to that degree. The Wizards didn't do it to that degree. Teams that have, obviously the Wizards are not a good example. The Cavaliers, a poorly run organization who do often lose games because of how bad they are prior to the LeBron era, never did it to that degree. So there is something to be said for the way the Sixers did it, being anti-competitive to such a degree that I do, at least part of me does understand why the league stepped in and essentially blacklisted Sam Hinkie from the league because they were losing money hand over fist on a Sixers team in a big media market that straight up was not trying to compete.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard with a lot of these teams is just like how hard it is to hit on a draft pick to change your franchise. Like you look at some of these picks and you look at, I mean, the Magic, for example, they weren't trying to be bad. They just consistently didn't hit on picks for so many years in a row. And now finally they're getting through, that period and they have some good players on their team, the Paolos, all those dudes, right? And so now it's like how hard it is to actually hit on these picks, I think is, I mean, for the, Sixers, back to the Sixers, like they hit on Oladipo, or not Oladipo, they hit on, Embiid, and I guess they hit on Simmons for a few years, but then that's about it. And so it's like, where do you really go from here, right? So, yeah, I think it's
a good point about Simmons. They hit on an all NBA, all defense guy until they didn't. Very much quicker than you would expect the type of fall off. So, maybe we look at the process very differently if Simmons is who Simmons was his first 3 years instead of who he's been the subsequent 3 years. That'd be a major change. Obviously, they fumbled it in other respects. Jahlil Okafor, not the guy.
But also, it's like
Fultz could have been the guy. Role player for the Magic now should have been better than he was.
When you build a culture of losing, you're like, oh well, these guys that won in college and these draft picks that have never done anything in the NBA, now we're gonna win all of a sudden since we have these guys. Like that's not how you build the winning culture. Like I feel like that's why the Lakers don't slump for long, because the Lakers definitely don't sell that to their fans and to their players and their free agents that they're bringing in. Is that, oh, we're a piece of shit team. It's like, no, look how many trophies we have. We're going to be amazing. Like, I feel like the Sixers like trust the process. Like imagine being a player there in like the first 2 years, like, oh, all right, so we're going to suck for 5 seasons and I'm going to play trash basketball. Like that's not, that doesn't really build anything. It's like a poor foundation, even if it's with the goal of building a good foundation with players going forward. But yeah, I mean, I think the best model is like kind of like the Thunder. I mean, they're just consistently stacking talent. And yeah, when they get to the point where they're like, all right, play-in team versus another, high value draft pick, let's just lose these next month of games, but still have like, and they still have like young, entertaining players that they're throwing out there. They're just not giving them as meaningful minutes, but it's still like a product and quality basketball. I mean, you get to the point to your point earlier about just kind of figuring out what to do within the season. There's a lot of NFL teams that kind of give up if they're like around 500 or, a game or two under, and they're like, well, let's see what we have with our rookie quarterback. Like that's not really tanking, but they're like, hey, if it goes well, it goes really well. If it doesn't, we know what we have to do for next year. You're always trying to plan for like that next season. So I think that is definitely something different from what the Sixers did to other teams that, like I'm sure the Cavs, when LeBron left, it's like, all right, they really suck. They kind of screwed themselves there. They got Kyrie Irving with the first pick, so that kind of helped them. But they were even bad with Kyrie was just there. But I think they just had no idea what to do when LeBron was gone and didn't really.
They got 3 number one overall picks in 4 years.
Did they?
Yeah, 3 number one overall picks in 4 years. So like, talk about the lottery being rigged during that time.
Yeah. One of
those
which
things
was,
that's just like, yeah.
One of which was Andrew Wiggins, who turned into
Anthony Bennett.
Kevin Love.
Anthony Bennett.
Yeah. And Anthony Bennett. Yeah.
So
like it's actually a really good point that you make, Ferentinos, when you mention the LeBron of it all, because going through the teams that I put together that tanked, and just for context for anybody watching or listening, I took the Spurs, the Magic, the Sixers, the Cavaliers, the Wizards, the Timberwolves, and the Lakers. And this is over the past 15 years, largely, I think, since 2010 or so. There are 2 teams on this list that have won titles. The Cavaliers with LeBron James and the Lakers with LeBron James. And it was either because of pieces that they acquired during the tank that they ended up pairing with him, or pieces that they used either to help get him or to get him, in the Lakers case, his complementary supporting cast in Anthony Davis or Kevin Love for the Cavaliers. Like, if your strategy of losing 70 to 75% of your games for 3 to 5 years necessitates getting the best player or second best player of all time to come to your team in order to win a title or to even go to the finals, is that a successful strategy? And I guess that's my big question here is, does tanking work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say no. I think there's so many different factors that go into it. I think strategically, because like even if you do put yourself in that blocker tier of teams that has slightly better odds, it's still like up to the gods to decide. I think just getting a good coach, building a good winning organization, and then just constantly trying to hit on picks. I mean, there's just so much talent too that I think you try not to overthink it and try to just hit on your picks, which is hard to do. I don't know. There's so many different factors. Who would have thought that Jokic would have been the MVP as a second round pick, or, really a generational talent. So it is kind of a crapshoot, but I think, getting a good owner, which is difficult because a lot of owners are rich assholes, is tough. And then, a good GM, but I feel like there's a lot of factors. I just don't think tanking there's articles and stuff every year about people trying to like find a way to not incentivize tanking. And I think it's for a good reason. It just leads to like bad basketball that no one wants to see. Do you think that there'll ever be relegation if like the G League gets a little bigger?
I'll let Jerod answer the question about tanking first, and then we can talk about relegation a little bit. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm happy to jump into that one.
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. I think the Sixers are just an easy way to just base that tanking just doesn't work, right? Like they're the clear, like of this list that Griffin had just talked about, the other teams were actually trying to not tank. They weren't necessarily like, they were trying, right? They just haven't been good, So I think the Sixers are just a clear indication that tanking just doesn't work, right? Because even now, the reason that they're good is because they got guys like Tobias Harris, James Harden. They didn't draft any of those guys. They just got them in free agency, right? So it's like, seeing the teams that have kind of built the homegrown talent and kept, one or two guys around. So they tried to do that, but for being bad for so many years, it's just like, one, it doesn't disservice to the franchise, to the city, to the players that are there. And yeah, like you said, getting a good coach, good head on your shoulders. I think the biggest thing is they need a competitive rebuild, right? There are going to be years that your team sucks, but it's getting guys that come in, they give a shit, they want to play basketball, they want to win a few games here or there. And we'll talk about it later. It's the same reason the Wizards, I don't think, are going to be as bad as people think, because I think Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole are going to shoot them to 30 games, So that's from 10. I mean, that's even pushing it, I know. But, but yeah, that's just kind of a long-winded answer. But, yeah, to the short answer, I don't think.
A lot of heat checks.
Thing is competitive rebuild.
It's gonna be heat checks all the way down. And Jerod, you never have to apologize for being long-winded on this show. This show, it's all we are is long-winded, and I'm the worst at it of everybody. I guess the quick follow-up, and I don't need anything long on this one. Would these franchises, of the ones that I noted, do you think that they would have been better off if they had tried competing that entire time? And this includes the Sixers, Lakers, Wizards, Cavs, Timberwolves, whoever else. Do you think they would have been better off, or are they in positions to compete now because they at least tank to some degree? Like, is the lack of culture building, is it worth it in exchange for top 5 picks?
I mean, define like competing, right? Like it's one of those things that when it just comes down to it, there's just going to be bad teams in the league,
Well, I guess that question's actually for the two of you a little bit. You define competing, because you have the Lakers of the world who would say, if we're not winning a title, we had an unsuccessful season. But then you have the Wizards of the world who say a play-in is what we're shooting for. So my personal opinion is, if you're a playoff team year in and year out, even if you're not going to win it all, if you're making the playoffs, I'm good with that. Like I'm happy with that. I think that you are a worthwhile franchise. But a lot of people would disagree with that. They would say, if you're not a top team or you're not a bottom team, the worst place to be is in the middle of the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes, from a case-by-case basis, right? For the years I know the Jazz aren't on the list, but the Jazz for years are making the playoffs, upper echelon of the Western Conference. This year, they thought everyone's like, they're going to tank. Yet then they have these dudes, these absolute dudes, you know,
Still
Walker
filthy.
Kessler, Laurie Markin, all these guys that are
a bunch of bros
that are trying. Yeah, I mean Jordan Clarkson, all these guys, right?
Jordan
So
Clarkson.
it's like, yeah, they're all competing. They're not necessarily competing for the same thing, but they're competing in a sense for, yeah, they're competing in a sense for pride, right? It's the Sixers were literally just tossing dudes out there that should have been in the G League. And so I think competing in a sense, it can be for a case-by-case basis, right? For the Lakers, Celtics, Knicks, everybody like that, like competing is championship or nothing. No, none of those fan bases. One, because they were spoiled, you know, and then purely, but also now it's the culture that people have built. So I think for me, competing is just, it depends on the team, right? There's just going to be teams that are bad, but are you going to show up every night and put your best foot forward? Or are you going to literally go in there and try and lose games?
And I mean, opposite to the teams that are tanking, the Warriors became like the most valuable franchise from being one of the worst franchises just by building homegrown talent and like building the team the right way. And they had a few breaks go their way in the way that they built their team, letting Steph Curry be Steph Curry. But
to put it lightly,
that just, I mean, it allowed for someone like Kevin Durant to want to come to their team though and kind of break the NBA. So I think that if you make yourself a destination for free agents, I mean, like we said, the two teams that won were teams that got LeBron James. It's clearly a good team building strategy is to like use your assets. And the Lakers did have a lot of assets when they traded for Anthony Davis too. And they had a lot. I mean, it was like Ken LeBron and the crew of young talent that the Lakers were building a team with win a title. Their title window wasn't there. They could get Anthony Davis doing that. You just accelerate your window. But I mean, the Lakers, even at that point, were kind of like how the Nets were in the middle of the 2010s, where they got to that point later in those years. So they had D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen. Like they were starting to build teams and guys that were making them well-rounded. Those Nets kind of remind me now of the team that they have with Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges and all those guys. But I feel like you just, instead of tanking as a way of looking at it, it's like figuring out when to open your championship window. And I think for teams that are always bad, you don't get that window a lot, but hitting on some picks definitely helps. But yeah, I mean, some of these franchises are just doomed. I think ownership is the bigger problem at the end of the day.
Sure. And a lot of the league right now is, oh, go ahead, Griff.
No, by all means, Jared.
Well, I was going to say, I think a lot of the league now, other than a few select teams, are like kind of trending, you would think, in the right, direction. We can go to the list of teams in the entire side. There's only a few teams that you can list that are like genuinely going to be bad, right? You want to say the Jazz are going to be bad, but they proved us wrong. But so you don't really know with them. The Wizards, they'll probably be bad, is when it comes down to it. And then the Hornets, right? And then other than that, everybody else that's in the league right now, you feel like they have a genuine chance.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be bullish. I know ESPN just dropped their rankings for the East Coast. I don't know if they did for the West teams, but I took a screenshot of it because the Nets were below 500 and I felt disrespected.
You always feel disrespected.
I think they'll probably
37 and a half. I wouldn't be that stressed about that, honestly. I feel like they're a just below 500 team on talent.
And Nets 150 to 140 games. It's a good bet.
Sure. I mean, to the point about, obviously about LeBron James or even about the Warriors, excuse me. The Warriors, the one year that they did tank, they got an asset out of it that they did nothing with because they didn't have the ability to develop him. That was the one year that they were bad, genuinely bad in like an 11-year stretch. They got Wiseman, who I believe was the number 2 pick.
Yeah.
And they did nothing with him and they traded him for essentially nothing.
Gary Payton the second or junior.
Yeah, who I think the second. I think there's another Gary Payton Jr.
It's the second.
His brother is Gary Payton Jr. So Gary Payton Sr. can go fuck yourself because that's just confusing. How dare you do that to us?
Griffin Mike Queen the second.
Yeah. No, it's not Mike, but sure.
I know it's not.
Yeah. But to the point about ownership, though, I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, ownership is a major part of this. People, I think very recently people have started to clue in a lot more on ownership, particularly as you learn more about guys like Dan Gilbert or Ted Leonsis or I'm going to forget her first name, but Paul Allen's wife that owns the Trailblazers, like owners that are perfectly happy winning 30 to maybe 40 games a season with the intention of backing into a playoff spot to get playoff revenue. And anything above that doesn't matter to them because all they want to do is take part. They don't want to take over. We're learning a lot more about those owners and we're seeing more of them. And you're seeing more like equity firms that are getting involved in major sports. And you're seeing collections of owners coming in because it's the only way that anyone's going to be able to compete with Steve Ballmer and the Clippers because he has so much more money than everybody else. Looking at the over-unders for this year, and I like the point that you guys made about this, there's not really going to be that many teams that are actually straight up atrocious. The Pistons are supposed to be pretty bad. They've got a lot of 21-year-olds and guys like Cade's coming back from a major injury, hasn't played basically in a year and a half. And it's a bunch of young dudes. Wizards are going to be pretty bad because it's all just shooters and guys who are going to be working for their next contract. Rockets, kind of the same thing as the Pistons. They got a lot of young dudes, but everybody else is supposed to win 30 plus games. We're not looking at, 10 and 72. We're looking at 30 and 52. So I don't know. Is everyone around the league now realizing that tanking is disincentivized? Like, is everyone coming to the same conclusion that we are coming to, that this is not actually the way to win championships?
Well, this is going to be a whole other podcast that you guys are going to have, but I think it's really just like, it's just going to be a different league in 2 years with this new salary cap. Like the Celtics, for example, are going to have two dudes making 110 million out of like the 170 before they hit that second tier, right? So it's like, then you have $50 million to make your roster, so it's like trying to draft these young guys and actually develop them so you can, it's the same problem. I mean, again, this is another podcast for you guys, but yeah, the salary cap, all that. So I think that's the biggest thing with these teams now is they're realizing they're going to have to get some homegrown talent in. And I think, the team that's going to have the most issue with this coming up is the Thunder. They have so many guys that are going to be worth, if they hit on these things, they're going to be worth the max in, 2-3 years. So they got Chet coming back, but yeah, whole other podcast. But yeah, I think you're right, Griffin. I think it's just not a viable method at this point.
Yeah, I mean, to the point about the Thunder before Ferentinos goes, the Thunder waived Ty Washington a couple days ago. He's a first-round pick. He was drafted like a year ago. And they have so many assets. They have so many picks. They have so many young guys that they waived him for nothing. They also waived Usman Garuba, who's another first-round guy. He's a late first-round guy. But no other team is so able to waive first-round talents. But the Thunder literally have to do it because they literally can't carry these players, and they already have too many good guys on their G League roster. Like that, they have an overabundance of riches at this point, to the point where now it's like, okay, no one wants to trade with us because they know they can get these guys for cheap when we have to waive them. They're just going to pay them a minimum.
I just think also there's just so much talent in the league compared to what there used to be too. So I think that's part of it is like, they've been adding teams, but I could generally think of people who could be all-stars on like every team, but then don't even end up making it. All NBA is like impossible. It's crazy that they, have discussions on trying to find room for players, but like trying to be a guard. There's so many guards. Looking at the FIBA team, all of the guys on there to me are playing at like all-star, could be all-star level. And, they're going to go back to their NBA teams, and the Nets, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are considered like glorified role players, but it's just crazy. There's so many talented players and talented players continuing to come into the NBA. I feel like, there used to be generational talent once every few years, but it seems like every year there's a guy that is going number one is going to be, insane in the draft. And guys that kind of come out of nowhere and develop and become superstars. I mean, Jason Tatum's been a 19-year-old kid out of Duke for 10 years now.
Oldest 19-year-old I've ever seen. Also, somehow the youngest 19-year-old I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Good time to be a basketball fan.
It is. And
fun team.
I mean,
I think
that's
a fun team.
I think it's a common idea, I guess, that this is the most talented the league's ever been. And you would expect that. Obviously people just get more talented every year. I assume at some point we'll see it plateau and kind of level off, but the international game grows. College is better than ever, at least in terms of like developing guys. The G League is better than ever at developing guys. There's more avenues for good players to make it to the league. Jerod, since we've got you, and I'll talk about my team as well. When it comes to the Timberwolves, obviously you've had two periods, we'll say, in the past 15 years that you could conceivably call tank periods. You've got that period where you drafted Zach LaVine, Karl Anthony Towns, Chris Dunn, Andrew Wiggins. You got through the Kevin Love trade.
I say the fat Kevin Love years.
And then you had the Jimmy Butler acquisition. You moved Zach LaVine for Jimmy Butler. You had your first playoff series, since the Kevin Garnett era, I guess, because there were none during the Kevin Love era. And then post Jimmy Butler era, because they didn't keep him because of the friction with Karl Anthony Towns. You then had a couple more down years. You got Anthony Edwards out of it. Now you're trending in the right direction. Looking at those two eras and that brief little period in between with Jimmy Butler where you guys won almost 50 games, for you as a fan, and not just you as a fan in terms of like what you're watching, but also you as a fan in terms of how you felt about the team's prospects to actually compete. Do you remember how you felt like when that was going on? Did you think it was worth it, or was it 10 years of this is the worst shit?
Yeah, I think the first one, it reminds me of what let's just put it back. It reminds me what the Thunder are doing correctly now, right? They have so many young guys that actually hit. Like we had so many guys that were just like a bunch of young dudes that we couldn't fit together. It's the same thing I think the Pistons are going to run into. They're going to have guys that they're just not going to be able to develop because they have too many young guys together that need the ball, don't know roles because they're just in the NBA. So that first year when it was like, Wiggins, LaVine, Chris Dunn, all those dudes, those were fun years with like Anthony Bennett because you're like, these guys are jumping out of the gym. They're, shooting threes. Like they were fun to watch. And I think as like the organization, I think that we were trying to develop to compete. And then when they were still, they're getting the 24, 25 years old and they're still not developing or in what we thought they could be, then they're like, all right, well, we just got Towns. Let's try and figure something out here, right? And let's get that's when we got Jimmy Butler. And then it was fantastic because we were actually, competing. It was actually fun. And then again, Jimmy Butler stuff just, I hated him at the time when it went through. And now on the other side of it, I would be like, I wouldn't want to play with Karl Anthony Towns either. So it makes sense. And now as a fan and getting Anthony Edwards and having the charisma that the guy has, and I think as Timberwolves fans, we've seen his charisma for the last 2 or 3 years, and some of his interviews that he does. I know that I send those to you, Griffin, a lot when they come across some of the charisma that he has in some of his interviews. He's been like this for 3 years, right? And now it's just being on a world stage. And so as a fan now, it's we just need to do whatever the hell it takes to make sure that Anthony Edwards stays in Minnesota forever. If he wants, everybody out of there, get everybody out of there. But I think for me, I felt. Circle back to your original question, Griffin. I don't think I felt the only time I really felt awful during the rebuilding phase is after the Jimmy Butler era, because it was kind of what do we do from here? It was we had to sell because it was okay, so how do we get better? And then again, when we talked about kind of at the beginning of the podcast, we just, we got Anthony Edwards, and now that changed the direction of the franchise. We hit on a number one pick that sometimes people don't hit on. So I think from the eras, the Wiggins eras, those were fun just to watch as a fan because they were trying to be competitive, and the games were generally, we just sucked and could never close anybody out. And now I'm just kind of happy to where we are at now, minus a few guys on the roster that, we'll see if this year is any different. But I think the brighter days are ahead, hopefully.
Do you think this is the year? And I know we go back and forth on this a lot. Do you think this is the year that they make a move off of Karl Anthony Towns?
I think I've listened to some Timberwolves beat writers, and I read a lot of their Timberwolves. I think they're going to give it one more shot because they kind of have to. They throw all their cards on the table. They have to give it one more shot, right? It's they pretty much sold their soul of
the last dance.
Correct. Yeah. So I really think this is the last
none
year,
of the titles before him. The last
yeah,
dance, but you don't have 5 titles before.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you guys. I don't know how much you guys. I mean, I know you guys know a lot too, but like, there's a lot of people in the within the league that have the Nuggets have said like the Timberwolves are their hardest series they played against because they only won one game and it was in overtime, but like we had dudes that can at least body, like they can't cover Jokic. Don't get me. Let me just
slow him down. You can slow him down.
You can slow him down. We have 2 dudes that are big, right? So like that's good to hear. Where it's like, all right, if we put these guys together, and they were showing signs at the end. But I mean, you look at today's day and age of basketball, like the lineups that we started in lineup is not conducive to what today's But now I'm seeing Towns in playing for the Dominican Republic, just standing in the corner shooting threes. Like if we could do that and just have him stand there and maybe, right? And now Jaden McDaniels becoming 6'11" this offseason is a whole nother topic that we could add into this.
He grew like 2 inches, right?
Yeah. And
that's
he's
crazy.
about to get his
Nuts.
So I think this is definitely the year. I think it's make or break. I think it's really going to come down to it before the trade. We're not going to trade him. We won't trade him like people are saying now. We're not going to trade him now. It'll be before the trade deadline. That like if we end up doing, they're going to give it one more shot. They have to because they brought in a new GM, president of basketball operations, owners for God's sake coming. They have to they have to just give it one more shot before they.
Sure.
Well, they're not going to blow it up, which is nice, but they'll get rid of one of the 2.
Yeah, and I mean you can't blow it up as much as you'd probably like to because of the draft picks that you traded for Gobert. The only way that you'd be able to get some of that back would be to trade Karl Anthony Towns. But I think people know right now, obviously other GMs are like, well, why would we trade with a team that has a superstar in Cat who doesn't necessarily meet the superstar criteria when you're in like big games? And like, why are they going to help out the Timberwolves at this point? Like, what's the incentive for them? I know Bill Simmons has talked about this. Some other people have talked about it. A 1-for-1 Karl Anthony Towns for Dame Lillard deal. I don't really know what that does for the Blazers, even though I love the idea of it for the Wolves.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think cool. I kind of like the idea of it for the Blazers, just if it's like, we'll have Karl Anthony Towns for 1 year. We'll see how he looks with these young dudes with Shaedon Sharpe and their other guard.
Simons.
Simons, Anthony Simons. And if it doesn't work, then we'll trade him for a bunch of picks, and we can immediately reload the team with our best players being 23 and 21 years old. Sounds awesome. But I don't think the Trailblazers are making coherent decisions like that right now. I think that they're just trying to win 30 games per year so that they can all keep their jobs. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last couple things I'll say on that, I think that trade's just not going to happen. And if it were to happen, the Timberwolves would also have to include Mike Conley in that deal because they're in no world are we going to have Damian Lillard and Conley or a third team to be involved, right? And yeah, just last thing I'll say on the Timberwolves is that people forget that it was more impressive that we won the play-in game last year than the Nuggets winning the championship. So
people do forget that.
People really do forget that.
That's the word around town. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say, Ferentinos, I don't mean to interrupt you. I think you may have been about to say something. I really loved that Nuggets run. I thought that they were incredible. They beat the Timberwolves in 5. They beat the Lakers in 4. They beat the Suns in 6. They beat the Heat in 5. They didn't lose a lot of games, okay? The more that I think about that run, though, the more I think the Nuggets are a beatable championship team coming off of that run because we did see visible flaws in them against the Wolves. But the Wolves had only had Karl Anthony Towns back for a few weeks, and their best player, Anthony Edwards, is like 21 years old. So you expect him to take another jump this next year. The Nuggets swept the Lakers, but every single game they won basically by single digits. LeBron James was playing on 1.5 feet. Anthony Davis had his injury stuff. And just as a team, they hadn't been together that long, and they'd been playing playoff basketball for essentially 3 straight months at that point, and they were all running on fumes. The Suns, kind of the same thing. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker barely played together. There's all the DeAndre Ayton stuff last year. There's all the coaching stuff last year. Now they've got Bradley Beal. Don't really know how I feel about that being a positive thing. But I expect Booker to continue to take maybe 1 or 2 more years of jumps. And if KD can play 55, 60 games and be healthy in those games, he's probably going to look better than he did last year. And he had those 2 games where he was incredible. And the Heat, I don't think the Heat were a genuine finals team, if I'm being honest. I'm not going to say that they were fakers, but they should not have been where they were. And much like the Lakers, they were running on fumes by the time they played the Nuggets. Yeah. I'm not saying all this to down talk the Nuggets, and I know it's going to come across that way. I'm just saying I'm looking forward to them being tested against, even if it's these same 4 teams again, I would like to see them against these same 4 teams at full strength, because really what it came down to last year with the Nuggets was they were healthy and everybody else wasn't.
Which I will say is always in reverse. So that's why I'm fine with the Nuggets having this.
Sure, yeah, they got fucked 3 straight years. And I'm happy the Nuggets won. I think they deserved it. I think it was really cool for Denver. I'm really glad Jokic got a title after all the dialogue about him not performing in the playoffs, which has always been bullshit. But I would if I could somehow take the 2023 playoff run and just duplicate it next year and turn injury sliders off, which I know Jerod loves to do in 2K. Injury sliders off, only play your starters. I would just, that would be so interesting to me to see how those teams actually match up when healthy. And one of the most interesting ones of those 4 teams is the Timberwolves, because of the 2 bigs and because of Anthony Edwards and because of their role players. I think they're a really well-built team that we haven't seen be well-built yet, because guys keep getting injured at different times.
Well, and I was going to say the Timberwolves, it seemed as good as it would be to have Lillard on that team, I'd rather see Anthony Edwards step up and take those shots that you would want Lillard to take. And he's been doing a lot more just play creation, out of the pick and roll I've seen for Team USA. Just doing stuff where I had to check for a second to make sure it wasn't Brunson or someone starting the offense, but he was initiating the pick and roll from where the point guard would. So I think that would help his game, but I mean, he's just been ridiculous in the FIBA run. And I think having that, he's always, and he hasn't big game stepped up and taken those shots, but it kind of seems like they do look to Cat and other players, but I feel Anthony Edwards just needs to take over and start just being that guy in the 4th quarter and just taking the ball and taking his shots. But on another point, I kind of wish Modai was here, because a lot of people will say Jimmy Butler is kind of like the LeBron at home, because he kind of carries his team. When he's on his game, he is kind of like LeBron in the way that he takes over. It's just funny that we look at, which teams have done well? The teams that tank and have LeBron, or get the assets and then get LeBron. Out of the Sixers, the Timberwolves, and now the Heat, I feel Jimmy Butler has been on teams where it's having Jimmy Butler, it's they usually do the best that they've done with Jimmy Butler on their team, and then he leaves, and they're whatever, he's gone. Some people are happy he's gone. Some people are upset he's gone, and the team is never as good again. I think it's kind of funny that Jimmy Butler has had that effect. I was just curious what you guys' thoughts on, because it sucks that he didn't get a championship. And I mean, it's just nuts that they've been to the finals 2 out of the 3 years. But I was curious Modai's take on with Jimmy Butler, and also Jerod, that whole, I mean, the stories of him taking the scrubs and beating the starters in practice. That's so good.
Didn't score a point. Didn't score a point.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a dude, right? He's just going to build that. He's just a dude that loves basketball, wants to play hard, is going to just call people on their BS, is going to just lead first, right? And yeah, that was a sad day being a Timberwolves fan those couple weeks, I'm not going to lie. But now looking back on it, we needed it. Now it's that's thing is why Edwards can take that next step, because he has that mentality of I'm that guy, I can, and I think that's just the nature of the people, people gain that confidence year in and year out. 19-year-old Jason Tatum, he's just 20, 5'7", what is he, 8 years in the league now? Seriously, he's at least 6.
It's been a long
Jason
time.
Tatum has been in the league since the 2018 season, because he played LeBron during that finals run.
Yeah, so this will be his 6th year, I think.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I think this is his 6th year. So yeah, I think Jimmy Butler just is that. It's a good, analogy, but yeah, he's just that someone that no matter what organization he's in or been in, and it's a clear, correlation. You can just look at the path he's taken. right? When he joined Miami, when he left the 76ers, I just remember him having a quote, and every year it pops up because I quote tweeted it, and it was something like, and I was completely wrong. He was saying, I want to go to a championship organization, blah blah blah, and he like joined the Heat, and I said like something along the lines of like,
right.
yeah, man, have fun joining the Heat, doing that or something like that. And
I know what tweet you're talking about, the original one. I don't know about your quote tweet, but a lot of people had that reaction.
Yeah.
That was a common take. I think Modai has a tweet responding kind of the same way because it was post Sixers, and everyone was like, all right, man, you're just gonna like go chill on South Beach. And he did literally the opposite.
$45 million.
Yeah. He hasn't chilled a second in the past 4 years. Random question, just because we're talking about Jimmy Butler a lot. We talked about the Suns a moment ago. Gun to your head. Don't even have to explain it to me. We'll start with you, Ferentinos. If you have to pick one of these three superstars to have on your team for this upcoming season, Jason Tatum, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, who are you picking?
For the Nets roster, if I could put one of those guys in the Nets.
Yeah.
Well, that's different for each team though, because you can try and fit people into that.
I would say I want to see what Jimmy Butler would do with this Nets team.
This is for your team. Pick it for your team.
It would either be amazing or no, it already happened because with Ben Simmons. So just give me Kevin Durant again. I was
Kevin Durant again. That's the most surprising answer. That's what I thought was going to be your third choice.
No, because if we still have Bridges and Cam Johnson and Ben Simmons, I think it could be fun. Like I said, the worst part.
That's true. You are adding Kevin Durant at that point for no loss to the players that were traded for Kevin Durant. Yeah, so that is fair. You'd have too many 6'10" wings at that point.
And he was still so much fun to watch on my team. I mean, I think
who's your point
Tatum, Dinwiddie.
Don't say Cam Thomas. Don't say Cam Thomas.
It would be Dinwiddie, but I just think that having someone not shoot as much as him would be great. Sure. But yeah, with Jimmy Butler, I was going to say it could be cool to see what he would do. I think he would elevate a lot of the people on our team, which would really help. And I think like him just distributing and trying to find Johnson and Bridges on the wing would be great. But, he would definitely turn Ben Simmons into a mental midget and just, make
turn him into one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that ship probably sailed.
Yeah.
Help activate his, self-defense mechanism where he just forgets how to play basketball.
He sure looks good in the offseason, though.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, does post on Instagram. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the guy looks incredible in Instagram photos. If you he's like the most aesthetic looking NBA player, but he doesn't play like an NBA player. It's very frustrating for I think most people.
I still have some hope.
Yeah. Look, man, 10-5 this year. It's going to happen. Jerod, to the same question. What's your answer?
Yeah, I think if I'm picking someone to be on the Timberwolves for the best chance to win next year, like as much as I want to say Jimmy Butler, because I've told you and I've talked about it before, like he would love Edwards. Those two would be like absolute, like those two would just be, I think to win next year, it's got to be Kevin Durant, just purely because how easily he slide. And I know how easily he can slide into any sort of role, right? And it's like, that would hopefully we'd get rid of one of the two big guys, but then have him and Jaden McDaniels playing that, then Kevin Durant can take the shots and Jaden McDaniels can cover the dudes that Kevin Durant, we just, take the things off. So if we're talking about purely just next year winning the title, it's got to be Kevin Durant, at least for the Timberwolves, because just a base of where we are, Jason Tatum would be my next guess because we need more shooters, but him and Ant just, may not be nasty, but yeah, I think I got to pick Kevin Durant there.
Interesting. Yeah.
And the Wizards, I think Griffin. Yeah.
Who do you think I would take?
I mean, I think you have to take Jimmy Butler.
It's Jimmy Butler. It's obvious.
You have to take.
He takes what, a 27 to 33 win team. That's like a 48 win team. You add Jimmy Butler to that roster. Kevin Durant, it's like great ceiling raiser. But how much of a floor raiser is he going to be with two other dudes who are going to take all of his shots? In Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. And then Jason Tatum, it's like, do I really need a taller Bradley Beal? No, I don't. I think it's interesting, but I agree with you that you guys all did not lead with Jason Tatum, despite being the youngest dude who maybe fits the timeline more. You took two guys who were on the wrong side of 34, but I agree with that because Jimmy Butler, like you were saying, like he's the LeBron at home, is one of the few guys who you can put on a roster and be like, yeah, we might be able to make the finals.
Yeah, I think even for the Nets, Matt, I think I could see like Jason Tatum purely because how young he is, right? Like Kevin Durant makes sense if you guys are ready to compete like now, but it's like Jason Tatum, if you guys can like pair him and Bridges together, like that. I feel like that should be a match.
If this is a 4-year question, I think we would all take Jason Tatum.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
in 4 years, Kevin Durant's going to be 40.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, that'd be a fun pairing. Jason Tatum and Bridges together. Like
so that's the thing. Like even watching FIBA, it's like Bridges, and he does have moments where it's like, okay, he could be like the isolated best scorer on a team, but he's still best when he's like just hitting key shots, playing as a good role player, and he would be the best 1B on a championship team. If you could just find,
I mean,
yeah, just that other guy that could be the superstar, and then like he would be the perfect Robin to a Batman.
I mean, yeah, you saw it on the Suns, right? Like he was, and then all of a sudden, that's just crazy, you know. And then all of a sudden, yeah, he was so much fun on this Suns team. Was so fun until he got traded, and but yeah, you guys got a good one, and he's like cheap in relative terms, right? He's cheap, like, you got him on a pretty good deal.
He's got like 3 years left on his deal or something like that. Like it's. Yeah, solid. And I'm glad that Cam Johnson also re-signed, so we got him locked up too.
What was the deal you guys? Was this 20 years, 20 mil a year too?
Yeah, I want to say he was signed for like 2 more years though. Let me see the Cam Johnson.
I'm just wondering if he might have got more money than Bridges, because I know the Suns like just signed Bridges to like 5-year, 100 mil, I think, or something like that.
Cam Johnson was 4-year, $80 million contracts. He had 20 mil a year.
I think Bridges was 5-100 if I remember correct. I could be wrong.
Something like that.
Or it was 4-100. It was one of those two.
Because Bridges, I think, essentially got the contract that people wanted the Spurs to offer Austin Reeves. I think it's a few $1 million more because he was entitled to a few $1 million.
People wanted Spurs to offer, or Bill Simmons wanted people to offer.
Well, I mean, apparently I was seeing reports today that there's a lot of anger around the league that certain teams didn't do this. They feel like they gave in to the Lakers. And without getting into it too much, again, if you don't want the player, all you're doing is burning bridges with other teams and with agents, and you're tying up your money during the moratorium. And that means that like you have 48 hours where you cannot compete for other free agents. So yeah, the Spurs, there's an argument that they could have done it, but like there's already a lot of beef there between their organization and the Lakers. Why are you going to make it worse? Like, why are you going to piss off everyone in that organization where they're going to make it their mission for the next decade to be like, all right, we're tearing down the Spurs? Because the Lakers have more money. They can do it.
Hey, say la vie, come at the French now. You got Wemby, Popovich.
Yeah, I mean, they got Wemby for now, and in 5 years, maybe he does what every Magic superstar
they want that
does
smoke.
The Lakers.
The Western Conference is better when the Lakers and Spurs are both nasty. I was just watching those Ginobili.
Everyone else disagrees. Everyone that's a fan of other teams in the Western Conference would hate that statement, but because you're a fan of an Eastern Conference team, you can get away with that. I guarantee that if like Kings fans or Suns fans or Blazers fans or Clippers
or Wolves fans,
like just the bloodbath that was left behind the Lakers and Spurs from the entirety of the late 90s into the 2000s. Like there's every single fan base hates those two teams, and they have good reason to.
Yeah.
I also just looked up Mikal Bridges' contract, and it was 4 years, $90 million, so 22. So he's getting more than about $2 million more than
20. Yeah,
Cam Johnson, which is
a
steal.
Yeah.
That's an absolute steal. And I want to ask because I've got a couple questions that I want to pose with. One of which is, and Matt, I imagine you'll talk about Bridges. It's what is your expectation this coming year for your best player for each of your teams? So I assume we're talking Anthony Edwards, although we could be talking Karl Anthony Towns. I assume we're talking Mikal Bridges. I don't think we're talking Spencer Dinwiddie. And do I do the Wizards or the Lakers?
You got to do Wizards.
I guess I got to do the Wizards.
The Lakers is easy. It's two dude,
Yeah, what's Jordan Poole going to do this year?
Sorry, not the best. He's not for LeBron or anything. Got like Reeves or something like that. Because a young guy who's in the same age range as your guys. But for the Wizards,
you do both, Griffin. You do both.
I'll do both. All right, Jerod, we'll start with you. What is your expectation for Anthony Edwards this year? Is he an MVP candidate? Is he, getting further in the playoffs? Like, what's he doing this year?
Yeah, I think MVP. I mean, it just depends on people take leaps, right? Like they've already talked about it. Like I've listened to so many podcasts that like before FIBA started, people were talking about like this is where Edwards is going to take a leap, and like how many guys before him, Kevin Durant took a leap after FIBA. A few other guys that I can't think of. Not that Kevin Durant wasn't going to take a leap, but like you go play in another country, you play in different rules. The refs are a little worse. Like the games are faster. I think this is the year. Too. More physical. I don't think like if I'm just being realistic, like he's not going to be like in the MVP, conversation. But it's necessarily going to be like he's going to be. I think like the year following, I think he could be in the.
I think he is, man. John Morant was. I'm just saying. I think
that's true.
I think if Edwards really goes on a tear and is like the guy in Minnesota, I could see him because his highlights are crazy. He goes at people with his dunks. Like, Ja was so entertaining because he was a very entertaining player. I think if Edwards has the highlights too to back it up, which he can do that, like I think MVP talks for sure. I mean, that's just me.
No, I agree. I just think it's the way that our team is structured, right? Like the way that we are built, like it doesn't allow him to have as much freedom as he like like obviously like the FIBA team, like he has the freedom because you have other 10 other guys on there that are studs. But like, and obviously you're not gonna have that. But like even the two dudes, like Towns is just if Towns can like give his ego a check a little bit and like realize like, hey, I'm making 40 plus million a year. Let me just chill and let him do his thing. Like then I could see him being in the MVP conversation, but I don't know if that's gonna happen just like the way that it's constructed now, only because he might be just limited in what he gets, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing. But could he be? I do agree with you, Matt. Like I really do think he has what it takes to be. I think it just really matters. What it comes down to is just how we're constructed. So I'm just hoping that we make a deep run in the playoffs. We prove all Minnesota sports fans wrong that we could do something, and just get exciting time. It's time. It's like you said, Matt. Honestly, I'm just excited. Not even just Timberwolves. It's a great time to just be an NBA basketball fan. So much talent across the league. Like it's a great time to buy the NBA League Pass. So yeah, I'm excited for this year.
Plug for League Pass there. Love to see it.
Sponsored or no?
Not yet, but hey, they can come calling whenever they'd like.
And they pissed me off that you can't watch nationally televised games on there. What's the point?
That might be ending soon. There's talk that
I hope
it could
so,
be ending
man.
soon.
I didn't realize how many Nets games I wouldn't be able to watch on Leagues Pass when I bought it just to watch Nets games. But because they played on TNT all the time, I can never see them. Anyways, still a great product. But to answer your question about how Bridges is going to do this year, I'd like to see somewhere like close to 30 points per game as the primary shooting guard. But really, I just want to see them play winning basketball. I think that they have the pieces and have a lot of role players now, but last year they weren't really that great. Once they traded Kevin Durant, they did have a kind of built up win cushion. So they ended around 500, but they definitely weren't 500 if you look at their win and loss total post trade deadline. So I just want to see his type of basketball lead to a winning type of basketball. If the Nets can finish a few games above 500 in that like 5-6 seed range, I think that'd be a successful like building block to the next season. Cause I mean, he's still young. He still has time to develop. I don't know what his true ceiling is going to be, but I mean, I think he could be a great shooting guard and championship team, or I mean, small forward. He's really a forward, but he has those guard and scoring skills. But yeah, that's kind of where I think I'd want to be for the Suns. I mean, the Suns core, Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges. Sure. I think the two of them together, I'm kind of looping them together because I think that I've seen both of their growth in FIBA. I mean, Cam Johnson plays on the second unit instead of Mikal Bridges playing with the starters, but their impacts are similar on both units, I think, when they're out there, and they're just fun to watch.
Do you think Bridges is
no
an
Ben
all-star
Simmons
this
mentioned?
Fuck you, Jerod.
I think Bridges I think he could be an all-star. I think if the Nets are doing well, that'll help. Because I think they're not going to have the pop that they used to have, just not having Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden on their team. So I think they're not
He's in
going
the
to
Eastern
be on their
Conference
side.
too. But it's not that anymore, is it?
There's a path to all NBA
so.
for Bridges just by virtue of being the only dude in the league that plays all 82. Actually, last year, who played 83.
If he does continue to be an Iron Man, yeah, because of the trade. You got that extra game.
Yeah, now that you've got to do the 65 game minimum, if everyone else hits a bunch of games, he might be the only option for all NBA. It might be him and Ant, you know.
I was going to say that. Yeah,
80 and 82 games. Yeah, the young Iron Men. We might only be seeing guys that are like 25 and under on all NBA going forward. So that'll be interesting. I've been thinking since you said that I have to do both teams. Obviously for the Lakers, it's Austin Reeves. Like, do I think he's going to be an all-star this year? No. Do I think he's going to be a bona fide third option for this Lakers team the entire year? Yeah, I do. I think LeBron is going to continue to take a step back. I think Anthony Davis is going to continue offensively likely to take a step back and just try and hone in on the defensive end, try and do a little bit of what Jaren Jackson Jr. does in the regular season, where he's just crushing guys in, 28 to 32 minutes a game. Austin Reeves is going to be asked to lead a lot of units. And so due to the Laker effect and due to, the FIBA growth and due to the fact that LeBron and AD will probably miss games, there is a world where we could see Austin Reeves being voted to the All-Star team just because of popularity and because of how many Lakers fans there are. I don't think the coaches are going to vote him in, but the fan vote could get him there. But I don't care about him being an all-star. I want to see him average, 19 and 7 or something like that. Like, I just want to see him become the best version of himself that's going to lead the team back to the Western Conference Finals and potentially the finals again if health is on their side. And then for the Wizards, I guess Jordan Poole.
Yeah,
I kind of want to say Koulibaly, but he's a project. Like he's going to be a really, really raw rookie. I don't really expect a ton from him this year. Kyle Kuzma's kind of a finished product. He's 27.
Yeah, that's true.
We're not. Kyle Kuzma's probably not going to get that much better. But Jordan Poole probably, maybe, potentially, I hope, still has room to grow and become who the Warriors thought he was going to be this most recent year, but on the Wizards. So, the percentages might be shitty. The assist numbers might be shitty. He's probably going to turn it over like 4 times a game, but he might score 27 points a game this year.
Yeah.
He's not going to be an all-star, but he might win us more games than we should win otherwise. And he's probably going to lose us a bunch of games. Like, he's going to do the same thing Bradley Beal did. Going to be really bad defensively. He's going to turn the ball over in the clutch. It's going to get hot sometimes, and fans of other teams are going to be like, oh, wow, this guy's really good. And fans of our team are going to be like, he's actually not that good.
When I think of Jordan Poole, I think of the meme of like Nick Young doing the hands up.
Putting the hands up? Yeah.
Like he's got that swagger, but
a meme could be a person that is someone other than who's in the meme. Yeah, that's Jordan Poole. Like I think we have seen him do that. I think Curry's yelled at him before about doing it. So I don't have the exciting things to look forward to with the Wizards that you guys do with the Nets and the Wolves. Obviously, I can't talk about my Lakers because they're coming off the Western Conference Finals, even if they were swept. But it's nice that we all have genuinely talented young players to look forward to watching develop this year. I hope Anthony Edwards is an all-NBA guy. I hope Bridges is an all-star. I hope Jordan Poole leads us to a top pick. And,
you see that,
we'll be all right.
And Bridges is like, stop doing my celebration to Reeves in practice.
And I'm glad that none of our teams are genuinely tanking.
Yeah, the thing about the Wizards, they might be a sneaky fun league pass team every now and again. Just like if you're bored, watch people just bang threes up, like run and gun. They're gonna run. They're gonna move. Tyus Jones running the point guard. Like they're gonna move fast.
Elliott mentioned that it's a good year to get League Pass if you're a Raptors fan. I think it's probably a good year to get League Pass if you're a Wizards fan too, because the Raptors have 4 national TV games. That sounds like probably more than the Wiz have. They might have the same amount, actually. They both might have 4. That's and the crazy. Raptors only have 4 because they're in Canada.
82 games.
Yeah.
There's a few teams like the Thunder. I mean, I don't know how many teams that they're going to have. The Thunder are going to be fun to watch. Even the Trailblazers, if they keep Dame with Scoot and Dame, like they'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
You know, like it's one of those things. I guess this might be the year.
That's my
Rockets,
last question
Pistons.
before we get out of here. I had a question that I was going to ask about who you thought the bottom 3 teams would be. This might end up being the same answer, but instead I want to ask, who are your top 3 League Pass teams going to be this year? And Jerod, you know, obviously Ferentinos will have more episodes to answer this, but I want to hear yours.
Well, we're not. I think we should not include our own team.
Because, don't include your own. And you guys are probably going to have a lot of national TV games anyways.
No, I think I put in here. I think we only have 5. I thought I saw that. I could be wrong, but I could be wrong. Let me look right now.
I think Anthony Edwards is going to be a top 15 player this year. That's crazy. Spurs, while he's looking it up, I'll hear yours. Yeah,
Spurs take it before anyone else could for Wembanyama. Let's see if I'm gonna go Pelicans. See if Zion's fat ass will get out there.
Harsh words.
and
Brandon Ingram, pretty cool guy.
Brandon Ingram, pretty cool guy. I'll take the Blazers. I'm gonna take your pick with Scoot and Dame because I do really want to watch Scoot Henderson play.
You guys can double on picks. There's no stopping.
Yeah, I'm gonna double. I'm gonna double. Yeah.
I'll take the Thunder then too as another cool. But I think they're gonna get a lot more.
The Thunder are gonna have way too many national TV. Yeah. They're supposed to be good this year.
But it's nice to see them actually realized.
Yeah, I think I really like your Pelicans pick. The problem is they're gonna get a ton of national TV game purely because of Zion Williamson when he doesn't play. They're slated in. I also lied to you guys. They have 10. Timberwolves have 10 games, so that's pretty good.
More than twice.
I'm gonna say Portland with UMatt as well. I think like just with Scoot and like Anthony Simons, if they keep Dame, like that'll be a fun team just to watch run and gun. And for Griffin and I, they're a West Coast team, so they're gonna be on at 7, 8 p.m. games.
10:30
so like
games.
so like for you that sucks to watch, right? But for us, it's like perfect time.
It's the best. It's the best honor.
Yeah. I'm gonna say the Magic as well. I don't think they're gonna get a lot of nationally televised games, but they have a fun team. Like, Banchero, like
and
Wagner. He's been I mean, they're gonna be a really fun team to watch. Yeah.
Wagner brothers.
It was fun to watch.
And I'm really. Well, I hate that I hate myself that I'm gonna say this, but I'm purely gonna just watch them for the intrigue. The Rockets, because they have all the storylines going into the season with Ime Udoka getting fired from the Celtics and then not fired, but let go, getting all this young talent that they have. And then Dylan Brooks signing and then Dylan Brooks signing the 4-year deal, like for $20 million a year, like, Van Vliet going there, like those 3 would be I think for me would be the Magic, the Blazers and the Rockets. And I left off similar to you, I left off the Thunder because, like you guys are saying, they're going to get a lot of national television games, so that, shy and all that. But yeah, those are my 3. And Griffin?
Yeah, so I'm gonna double down on your Magic pick. The Magic are going to be one of mine. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch, but they're like not at that point yet where everyone's tuning in for Paolo to like take over the league. But they're gonna have a fun style of basketball, and when he's on, like he reminds me a lot of like a more physical Carmelo. And I just fucking love watching him play. I'm going to say the Pistons because I'm curious how this just collection of young talent, all these like top 7 or so picks, how they're all going to fit together. I really fucking love Cade Cunningham. I'm really curious to see if he can like make it all work because I think like of the young combo guards in the league, if anyone's going to be able to make it work, it's going to be him. And I'm going to say the Mavericks, not because I like Mavericks basketball or that I like wish anything good for that team, but I just want to see like chaos. And I feel like there's going to be chaos. And kind of the same reason that Jerod picked the Rockets, another Texas team. Like what is this team going to be? Are they going to be really, really good? Are they going to be awful? Are they going to be like the most boring version of 36 wins? Like, I have no idea what the Mavericks are going to be. And so much of it is going to be watching of Luka and Kyrie show up. I can't wait. It's like, I'm rooting for them to fail. I will admit that. I'm happy to admit that. But if they succeed, I think it'll be success in the most interesting way.
I'd love to see their 36 wins, but have the #1 offensive efficiency and 32nd defensive
29 defensive. Yeah. Well, the Wizards are going to be worse than them defensively, but other than that,
But I mean, just Luka is so much fun to watch, and I mean, when they were both on the court, the Mavs were pretty good last year. Then they decided to tank, but it'll be interesting to see.
We'll see how
I'm just glad no one picked the Sixers because they are the worst brand of basketball.
I think I was here. I was telling you too. The Sixers, I skip national TV games during the Sixers play. I watched the Bree Dawkins guy on YouTube. I watched his highlights after the fact so I can see all the buckets and see any cool plays. I don't watch Sixers games in full because they're so aggressively ugly to watch play. And I'm not saying the Wizards are a fun team to watch. A lot of years, even when they have a good offense, they're not. I would like to skip Wizards games, but I can't. So I skip a lot of Sixers games, and I skipped a lot of Rockets games back in the day. And maybe there's a little correlation there. I don't know. Anything else you guys want to chat about, or can we get out of here? We went longer than I expected. Am I cutting out again?
We did. We got some guy named Andrew 32393 said, dudes."
Appreciate him checking in. Feel like I might know that might be March 23rd, 93. Feel like we know whose birthday that is. But yeah, I think we're all good. Let's get out of here. Jerod, thanks so much for taking the time. Appreciate you joining us today. Ferentinos, as always, thank you for being here. Elliott, thank you for being here. If you're watching live, we appreciate it. Andrew, anybody else who might be watching. And if you're listening to us after the fact or watching us after the fact, thank you so much. We will see you next week. We are here every single week, Wednesday nights, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you're following us on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, on OnlyFans, on Patreon, on any platform you can find us on.
We got it all.
We will see you guys next time. If you know, you know. It goes out.
Peace. If you know, you know.